Next chapter is about Edonomy. Edonomy, it means Edo economy. This graph shows the world GDP over the last 2 millennia. If you look closely, in the 15th century around here, you start to see a little bit of growth. And then in the 17th century, you see more obvious growth. And then in the 19th century onwards, you see more of exponential growth. So what happens here in the 15th century, it relates to the history of Europe. They started the age of the discovery. So a lot of the Europeans, they started to go different places around the world, and then because of this, they also started to do trading. The peak, or like the starting of more trading, happens during the 17th century. This is also known to be the Dutch and also the British East Indian Company. So they started to do trading, and then between different places, and then it was more of a dynamic trading system that they have established. So this is the influence of the growth that you can see more obviously in the 17th century. And then if we look closely into different places in terms of the GDP growth, number one is London, and number two is Edo, and then number three is the Netherlands. So this is also related to the British and the Dutch East Indian Company. This is the influence that they had in terms of trading. So the similarity that you can see between London and the Netherlands is that they did the trading, and then also they had the colonization happening at that time. Why the trading is something that is actually why trading is something that contributes to the GDP growth. It's related to this economic base theory. So if you understand this theory, you understand how the trading can contribute to the GDP growth. So from this economic base theory, you understand that this is your own region, and then you have the production and the consumption that is happening within your own region. So if you are only producing the amount that for the population that are living in the area, that means that the production and the consumption is equal. So this means that you will always have this one-to-one relationship, and so that the growth is equivalent to the growth of the population, and it will never go exponentially. So that is the system if you only have your own region being self-sustained. In order to boost the growth, you need to expand the consumption. So if you are only looking into your own territory, the consumption is limited because of the number of population. The idea is that if you can expand your territory to produce something for more population that is beyond your territory, you will have to do a trading. So by trading, you are expanding the number of population to produce stuff for the people who are living in different regions. So that is the way that was the actual the way to increase the production, and then therefore you are also increasing the growth. The idea of the colonization is similar. You have more population that requires consumption, so therefore you are producing more, and then you get also a profit because you are actually obtaining the resources from the other territory, and then you are again doing some exporting, and then you are doing trading between different regions so that you get some more profit from that, and then therefore it will grow, the GDP will grow even more. So that is the idea behind this trading and colonization. So it's quite understandable to see this result of London and the Netherlands, but Edo is not the same as the London and the Netherlands, and the big difference is that it was in the state of a closed country. So I explain about this in detail. This in Japanese is called sakoku, and it literally means a closed country. it started from 1639 and then it lasted until 1854. To be more precise, people might think that we were completely enclosed, but actually it's not that we were completely, but we had limited trading. So the only four places that we were trading at that time was between Korean Kingdom, the Ryukyu Kingdom, which is current Okinawa, and then China and the Dutch East Indian Company. So how come we limited this? When the Portuguese, they were actually arriving in this Japan, and then they were also settling in Japan before these people arrived. Why we expel them is because of Christianity. So these people, they were starting to kind of spread Christianity, and Ieyasu at that time, he didn't want this to happen, and therefore Japan was in an enclosed state because they didn't want people from outside to come and then to spread Christianity. The agreement with the Dutch was, how come they were able to come here to do the trading, is because they made an agreement that they will not influence in terms of Christianity. So that was the kind of deal that they had. But it was still, compared to the rest, compared to London and compared to the Dutch, the Japanese trading happened in a very limited area, and it was very, very small. It's not as dynamic as them. Even the land that they were provided to actually do the trading was limited in this boundary here, which is located in the south of Japan, and this is called Nagasaki. And then it's an artificial island, just for this trading to happen, as a gateway for these four places to do the trading. So how come Japan was able, or like Edo was able to have this GDP growth that is even more than the Dutch, who were doing this dynamic trading? So Ieyasu's strategy was not to do an international trading, but instead try to create a dynamic flow within the nation, within the country of Japan. So during this period, in Japan, there were small little territories distributed all over the country. So you can consider that it's kind of like small little mini countries that are being that are settled in this the entire nation of Japan. So in each area, they will have their each culture, and then therefore using that potential, he tried to create a dynamic flow so that we are doing some exchange. The strategy, which was actually not necessarily directly related to the economic flow, but it contributed as a result, was the Sankin Kotai. So the Sankin Kotai, it was a military service of alternate attendance. What does it mean is that each year they will have to move from their own location to Edo. So 1 year they will live in their own territory, but the other year they will have to live in Edo. And to force them to really come to Edo, the first wife, and his heir, his son, who's going to take over him after, these people, they were actually permanently living in Edo as a kind of like a hostage, so that the samurais, they will always be coming to Edo every year. So 1 year they will be spending in their territory, 1 year they will be living in Edo, and then they go back and forth each year. So you can imagine that this is quite a big project for each of the feudal lords, each of the samurais, and then they spend a lot of money. They spent actually consumed so much money on this. In this image here, you can see how the performance of the moving was part of the event for the local kind of towns that they were walking along the way to the journey, through the journey. and then many of the people in between the town, they will see the performance of the walking of the sunrise, and then therefore it means that it was kind of like a show for them as well, to kind of show their power. And so that's why they were consuming a lot of money, and then they were spending so much on this. In the territory, the bigger territory that you have, it means the richer that you are, and then this will equal to more people that you will bring. So the biggest territory at that moment, they were called Kagahan. So in Kaga, they will have, which is quite far away from Edo, they will have to bring like 4,000 people each year back and forth Edo, and then the area Kaga. So you can imagine how costly these things were, and then it wasn't really the objective of of the Tokugawa shogunate to let these people to spend so much money, but as a result, it did ended up weaken the power of each of the territory, because they were spending so much money on this performance of Sankin Kotai. This is something that was actually told to be not the intention, but as a result, it did contribute to the fact that the stability of the shogun, the Tokugawa power, was there, because the rest of the daimyos, they were kind of losing power because they were consuming so much of the money. But the contribution of this Sankin Kotai, it also affects the other places, the small towns in the rural areas. So this is where the fact that Ieyasu built the 5 routes contributes as well, because there are a lot of people coming from different places, and then because of that, it will influence or it would encourage them to make the roads to be properly paved. And so after this, they were establishing different routes all over the country, and then that was kind of encouraged because of the Sankin Kotai. The good part of this is that the small little towns popped up, because like for example, this route from Kyoto to Edo is around 450 or 500 kilometers distance, and then you cannot walk this distance in one day. So there are small towns that popped up with the inns, and then places to stay, and then also places to eat. And these daimyos, the samurais, they will stay in different places. Meanwhile, they are walking to Edo. So you can see this scenery from the ukiyo-e, and it's, for example, this one is called Tokaido, and then Tokaido, there are 53 stations. 53 station means 53 towns with inns and places to eat, places to stay, and then places to eat. And so it did establish some benefit for the small little towns to sustain. So that was the good part of the Sankin Kotai, which also leads to the contribution of the GDP. So each year you will have so many people entering into Edo to live there. Samurais, they are the high income people, so you can imagine that they will be consuming also a lot of product that were being produced in Edo. But then at the same time, in each of the territory, they have their own culture, and then they have their own pride in what they are making. And so they will also bring those things to Edo, and then that will be a good exchange in terms of learning a new technique and new skills, and then the know-how, and then some of the product that they are influencing each other. So that is the kind of cultural dynamic that has been produced because of the Sankin Kotai, and thanks to that, all these people from different countries or different small territories, they will come and then gather in Edo. So for the merchants who were living in Edo, the target group to do the trading was between the samurais. So that the samurais, they are high income people, and then they will be living in Edo, and then the samurais, the merchants, they will be trying to do trading between these people. Um, However, what the system that they had during that time in terms of the like selling and buying was that the samurais, they would buy some product from merchants, but then it's on a kind of trust based, and then therefore they do not pay on the spot, but then they will pay lump sum afterwards, and then that would include the interest rate. So the 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 merchants, they get profit on top of what they are selling with the interest that is being returned afterwards. However, because of a lot of these economical because of a lot of the consumption that is happening for the samurais, the economy for them starts to actually go down, and then the returning of the money was not done properly in a certain period. So comes to a moment where there is a bubble of the samurais. It bursted, and then that influenced a lot of the merchants because they were never getting back their money. So a lot of the merchants, after the bubble bursted, they were they have been led to bankruptcy. So that was something that was actually happening. Not only that the samurais, they were the good target, but after the bubble, a lot of the merchants, they went bankruptcy, and then they had a lot of crisis. So you might think that if you just look into that, then the GDP of Edo as a whole, it will go down. But it didn't go down. It actually increased after the samurai bubble. So how come this happened? Is because from samurais, the merchants, they changed the target to the citizens. So 50% of the people who are living in Edo, they were the samurais. So they are the high income people. But then you had 50% who were the citizens. So if you change the target group to the citizens, then of course you will also have to change the strategy that you have in terms of selling the product. So what they did is that they changed it to on-the-spot cash payment. So before it was more of a between the trust, and then you will get the money afterwards, having the interest on top of it. But for the citizens, they are not really the high income people. They are more of an average to low income people, and so they, instead of doing such a system, the merchants, they changed to the cash system. So if you buy the product, they will have to pay on the spot in cash, and that led to some kind of stability in terms of the market. Also, in terms of the product itself, if the people who are the citizens, they are never be able to buy a high quality product that the samurais, they will buy. So the merchants, they also change the strategy in that sense, that they will create a different line, so that the citizens, they are more, it's more for daily uses, and then the citizens, they can also buy those products that are much cheaper. So this is a bit like the brand, where like Vivienne Westwood, they will have a brand that is a gold label, which is the really expensive one. But then on the other hand, they will have this red label, which is slightly cheaper, and then it's a little bit more purchasable for us who cannot buy the gold label. Also, like Johnny Walker, the whiskey company, they will have the high end, which are the black label, and then you have the ordinary ones, which are the red label. So that was kind of like the differentiation that they were making. The good products, they will be more targeting for the samurais, but then they will at the same time produce something that is a bit more of ordinary uses, for daily uses, which the target group will be the citizens. This image here is Kidai Shoran, and then it is 1.2 meters long scroll of how the life in Edo was like, and then this was specifically a drawing of Nihonbashi area. And then I mean, from the image you can already understand that it's a mixture of samurais and then also the citizens who are not the high end but the average to low income people. They are all mixed in the city, and then there were so many businesses going on in different places. According to the records that exist, there is a catalog of the Edo shops and restaurants and businesses that were happening. And according to this document, there existed 2,600 shops in this area. So this is how much you can imagine that this Edo was actually expanding with a lot of businesses going on. The other thing that contributes to the GDP growth was the division of work that was happening. And the division of work, it means that it created a new job opportunity for many, many people. This image here, it shows the process of how ukiyo-e paintings have been produced. And ukiyo-e paintings, you will have an artist who will be drawing the basic picture, and then he will ask the publisher if he approves the drawing, and then it will go in the process of printing. The printing process is not done by the artist, but he will pass the work to somebody else, and then this work has also been divided into different parts. So in terms of the printing, so you have the publisher, you have the artist. Then the artist, he will actually ask the other people to produce the printing for him. The process includes the curving of the wood like this. Also, the coloring process is done by somebody else, and then also the printing here is also done by somebody else. So the division of labor, it's in my previous lecture on capitalism, I was mentioning about the fact that during the Industrial Revolution, people were losing identity because of the division of labor, so division of work. And why that happens is because each of the people, they are working like a machine, and then they do not know exactly what is happening, which parts they are producing in terms of the whole. So when this happens, then you do not know exactly what you are producing, and then therefore it could lead to this loss of identity, because you are just being mass producing something that you do not know exactly what you are doing. But if you take some pride in what you are doing and then knowing exactly what part of the whole that you are producing, then actually it could empower these people to lead to the pride in what they are doing. And in the case of the Edo period, this division of work actually was working in a positive way, because it also empowered people. It also created some confidence to people in doing exactly what they know, what they are producing, and then they are participating in this process. And so when this happens, then the division of work, I guess it can work in a positive way. It also creates a job opportunity, a new business opportunity for different people. So the life of the people, talking about the low to maybe the average to low income people, you can see from this image that the life in the small houses, they were actually quite dense. The block here is a neighborhood block, of a typical neighborhood block, which is repeated in side by side. So here you will have the main street, and then also this is the main street here, and then you will have the big merchant house along here, and it's a shop house. So these people who are living there, they will probably be directly doing businesses using the main streets where people will come. So these are the shop houses, and then inside the shop houses you have these small units which are where the low income people will be living. And then this is a row house, and each unit is like this. One unit is like that, which in terms of the interior, it looks something like this. So each unit, a typical unit, will be around 10 square meters, and then you will have 3 to 4 people living in one house. So this is quite dense because it means that if you have 3 people, you have like 3 plus square meter per person. But if you have more children, and then you could end up only having like 2 square meter per person. So this is quite dense, but the life in this townhouse, this one small little unit, was not so bad. Through the excavation work that has been done, a lot of the things that they were using, we can see from the excavation work, and the potteries, the small rice bowls or like the cups that they use, it was quite a good quality. And then we can see from the remains of the excavation that the things that they were eating, it was not so bad at all. So in the life in this super dense area was not so bad. It was quite pleasant. And I think on top of the product that they had, which was not so bad, it was quite a good quality. I think it's also about the fact that you had the well, and then you have these kind of public spaces which are to socialize, and also the fact that the sanitation was done properly, and the fresh water were running, and then you had people were able to maintain themselves in a healthy condition. So considering that, Edo was extremely a clean city. So when we opened up our country, and then a lot of the Europeans, they came to see the city of Edo, they were quite fascinated with the fact that Edo was extremely clean. And this is because thanks to this sewage system that they have already installed during the Edo period, and then also this freshwater pipe that they were running, where people can easily get the water from the well, and which leads to the healthy condition that people were living. So the life in this the row house, it was actually not so bad. It was quite pleasant, despite the fact that each unit, they were extremely small. So this is some sceneries that you can see from the ukiyo-e. This ukiyo-e, these are mass-produced paintings, and why they had to do the mass production is because many of the people, the citizens, they were buying this product in a cheap price. So the target group of the ukiyo-e, they were not the samurais. They were not necessarily the samurais. They were actually for targeting for the people who were not necessarily the high-income people. So even the low-income people, they can enjoy this kind of ukiyo-e painting because it was quite cheap in terms of the price. And then so this was some kind of pleasure that they had, and then they also had the money to buy these kind of things. Also, the people, they were able to go to see some performances such as sumo. So this is sumo wrestling scenery. You can see it's full of people, and it's not only the samurais who enjoy this, it's more for the citizens. Also the kabuki performance. The kabuki performance is a traditional Japanese performance that we have. And then you might think that this was targeting for the high-end people, the samurais, but actually it wasn't really for them. Also, the other people, the citizens, they were able to join to enjoy these performances. And so from this image here, you can see again it's full of people. and this thanks to the fact that the people they had businesses going on, and then they had some stability in terms of money, so they can spend their money going enjoying seeing the performances, and also they had the time to have this recreation. Yet there are also crises that happened in Edo period, which led to shrinking city. So the three of them that I can mention are listed here, and I will explain one by one. The first one is political shift. In terms of when it happened, this one is the last one, but I will mention it as a first one because it's the most easiest one to understand. The political shift happened when the black ship arrived to Japan with Perry. So this is called Perry expedition, and then the ship arrived from the U.S. So the objective for them was to let Japan be open to the world, and then so this has led to this shift in from the shogunate system to back to giving the power to the emperor. And this event is called Meiji Restoration, which happened in 1868. So what does this mean is that basically the 15th Tokugawa shogun, he decided to step down, and then he decided to end the Edo period and give back the government to the emperor. So in that sense, this is something that is quite a brave decision for this 15th Tokugawa shogun to make, because 260 plus years the Edo period has lasted, and then he will be the very person who will be ending this history. So for him it will be considered as a loser, but he chose to do this because looking at the other countries, the neighboring countries like China, when these kind of things happens, with the foreign people coming in to actually invade the country, then if you fight against it, usually we will lose. And so looking into this, the 15th Tokugawa shogun, he decided if we protest against what these people are saying, we will probably be invaded and then we will be colonized. So he didn't want this to happen, and then therefore he took the decision to open up and then give the power back to the emperor. And then he decided to, instead of fighting, he decided to negotiate. So that was the reason why no longer the samurais were needed, because no longer this kind of system exists anymore. Therefore, all the samurais, they lost their job. So looking into this system diagram, it relates to this resource, specifically focusing on the work. So because of the shift of the political shift, samurais, they were no longer needed, and then therefore they lost their job, and then it led to also the shrinking city. After the Edo period, half the population left the city. The second one is about water scarcity. In water scarcity, there are two events that happens. So one of it is the overpopulated condition. So at one point, the population of Edo was growing so much that all the resources were not being able to be fully distributed, and then therefore the government, they decided to control the population. So this happens in 1722 when they thought that it was overpopulated condition. What they did was actually to close some of the waterway so that the water does not flow there, and then because of that they were able to control a certain size of the population. So looking into this diagram, um, again it's about the resources, but then for this case it's about the natural resource, so specifically focusing on the water. And then it was providing a negative effect, and then it was causing problem because of the overpopulated condition, and then people were not able to get enough water, and then therefore it was leading to this lack of resources, specifically focusing on the water issue. So they tried to solve the problem by actually limiting the amount of water that is flowing to the city area. And by doing so, they are also controlling the size of the population. So in that state, they were not accepting people to enter anymore into the Edo city. So this is the flow you can understand. The second part of the water scarcity is about the deterioration of the water system. Well, after all these years that the waterway was functioning, it becomes a certain point where it gets a bit deteriorated, and then because they are using for many decades, and also some parts they were clogged, and then the water was kind of drying up because the water was not flowing properly. So it causes a problem because fresh water is something that you need to live, and therefore what happened is that the merchant association, they formed a group. So a group of merchants, they formed this association. So I'm talking about the rich merchants, and so they formed this association, and then they each of the merchants they kind of provided, they sponsored in order to fix the pipe. Okay. So this is about the fixing of the problem through this association, which means it's quite similar to what Marx is saying about in terms of his concept of association, because what Marx is saying is that whatever that we have, we are given from the nature. So in this case, water. Water is not that we are producing water. Water is something that we have been given from the nature, and then this should be distributed equally to the people. So this is again something that is Marx is saying, that anything that is related to resources that are being produced naturally from the nature, it should be redistributed equally to the people. And then when it comes to some management issue, Marx is saying that it should be organized and managed through a bottom-up approach in the way that is forming an association, which is a voluntary basis, and then they should be the one to actually solve any kind of problem or do the organization in terms of the management. So in that sense, the event that happens of the fixing of the pipes, which were done by the Merchant Association, is quite similar to what Marx is saying in terms of his concept of association. So going back to what happened in Edo, so it was causing a negative problem. It was causing a negative effect, and people started to try to solve the problem. But this is done by the Merchants Association, and because they fixed the problem, then they were able to accept more people afterwards. The last one, the third one, is about the natural disaster that caused to create destruction of towns and farmlands. So in Japan, we have a lot of natural disaster. One of it is the volcanic eruption. So in 1783, there was an eruption of Mount Asama, and this has led to this Great Tenmei famine. And for this, a lot of the towns, they were destroyed because of the ashes. and people were dying out of starvation because they had no food, they had nothing to eat, and then also it destroyed a lot of the farmlands. So people had no work to do anymore because the farmlands, they were completely covered by ashes, and then they were not able to do the cultivation, and then therefore they were not being able to do the businesses. And so it led to a lot of riots because there were the high income, the rich merchants, they were still making business, and then these low income people and the peasants, they started to do a riot, and then it caused a lot of confusion in the society. So in order to kind of settle this issue, again the Merchants Association, they formed a group, and then they started to build a storage area. So it's really done, it's paid by the Merchants Association, and then they paid to build a storage in the city area to store rice and then to store food, which are for providing to the poor. So they built it so that it is enough for 500,000 of the population, and then it should last for half a year. So this was all done by a bottom-up approach, and the association were the ones who were providing or solving the issue of the poor. The government at that moment, it's not that they didn't do anything, they did something. The government, they opened up some facility so that these people who were affected by this great Tenmei famine, they were able to go to some facility to be empowered. So this is a kind of like a training facility where the government was organizing, and then meanwhile they were losing their job, they were learning new skills, and then they were actually being empowered so that they will be ready when the businesses will restart again. So that was what the government was doing, but in terms of really providing the food enough for these poor people, was more initiated and done by the Merchant Association. So this culture is probably still in our DNA somehow. So this is a lecture that I explained about in the TOD of the Japanese TOD. In the Japanese TOD, you have the macro system, but then you have the micro system that you see on a very local level. And the fact that the TOD as a whole, it works, is because of these small little nodes of the local community that facilitates the economy to happen. So in the local area, usually you will have a shotengai, and then this shotengai means a commercial district, and then they will form an association, and then these shotengai association, they would actually be organizing a lot of events so that the local people, the local residents, from time to time they will gather, and then they will interact with each other, and then they will have some kind of events that they can share. So these are all managed and organized by these shotengai usually, and then you see these kind of festivals in different seasons. These festivals actually is to commemorate some of the past disaster that happened, and some narrative is there to actually represent the fact that how we recovered, and then how thankful we are what we are doing today. So these kind of festivals actually relates to some of the events in the past, and then therefore each location, they will have a different narrative, and these things are all managed and organized usually by this Shotengai Association.